Scott and I met from a mutual friend back in like 1983, 84. I'm a couple of years older than Scott. And this mutual friend said, oh, I got a buddy, Scott, who's a huge Kiss fan. And back then I had all these photos in glass 8x10 frames on all my walls in my bedroom. Okay. So whenever people would come over for the first time, they'd just go, oh my God, look at these pictures. Cause I had half of them then. So Scott came over for the first time. I think his mom dropped him off or something like that because he wasn't driving yet. And he was a big Kiss fan, as I was, and we just connected from there as being Kiss fans. And I think he probably bought a couple of my photos back then, or I gave him some. And we just became friends from there, big Kiss fans. And 40 years later, let's put a book together. And when I asked Scott a couple of years ago, I said, hey, I got this idea. I want to run by you. And he was very familiar with all my photos. And I said, what if we did this book, And right away he says, yeah, let's do it. Not knowing what to expect, what it was going to cost, what we were going to do with it, how long it was going to take. Took 2 years, by the way. And then here we are with you guys. That's the long and short of it.
Okay, well, There's a big, giant part missing.
I was giving the long and short of it.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Let's talk about how your first concert that you ended up with a camera in your hand, and how it didn't get snatched away from you or thrown in the garbage, or did you sneak it in your underwear or what?
Well, as you guys remember back then, it always said on the ticket, no cameras allowed.
Yeah.
At least for us in the Bay Area here, it always said no cameras allowed.
Yeah.
And I was in high school and I was taking some photography classes and I was just into it. And I thought, how cool would it be if I can actually get my own photos of my heroes that we're seeing, right? And I had the camera and a small zoom lens. And you're right, they pat you down. And back then, I'm all 15, 16 years old when I started doing this. And I had a black members only jacket, right? And I would take the camera apart. I'd take it apart, take the body camera off the lens off the body. And what I would do is I would stick it on the inside of the sleeve under this here, okay? Then I take the lens and do the same over here. I would push my sleeves up so I looked all bulky, okay? Then I had the camera strap wrapped around my waist like a belt, okay? And the film was already in the camera. I always, for the most part, only had one roll of film. And when I'd walk in for the pat down, I would open my jacket and raise my elbows like this, and they would pat up to my armpits, not knowing 2 inches away is the camera.
Yeah.
And once I got past that, I was home free because it was always general admission back then. So once I got into the show, I was generally home free. And that's how I did it, maybe 60 plus times.
Yeah, there's a part in the book that first of all, thanks for sharing that, because I did want to bring that up. I thought it was really interesting how you smuggled the camera in bits and pieces on your various parts of your body and whatnot. But there's a lesson in the book that I thought was interesting. You just said that you most of the time took in one roll of film and you already had it loaded in the camera, but you learned a valuable lesson about that. I want you to share that story with our audience.
Well, what happened was, again, I'm a kid in high school and, I still had to pay for film developing. So I didn't have a lot of money to be spending on film. And the other thing was I didn't want to spend a majority of the concert taking photos. I wanted to enjoy the concert. You know what I mean? So I may be taking pictures for 10, 15 minutes of the show throughout the show. So I want to remember the show itself. But I think what you're alluding to is Van Halen, a couple of Van Halen shows. The first one, 81, the very first show I talk about, we had second row center seats, Van Halen at the in 1981 Fair Warning tour at Oakland, and I decided to bring 2 rolls of film. I was going to splurge, let's bring 2 rolls of film, and got in, and I realized we were so close to the stage that security was just a few feet away from me. I just kind of conceded I can't take pictures because I got security, 6 feet in front of me.
Right.
So the show goes on. My buddy was with me. He got his camera. Then I noticed he's taking pictures. So I said, what the hell? So I started taking pictures. I'm like 7, 8 feet away from the guys in Van Halen. I'm that close. And the lighting was great. I'm getting these great shots. I said, I should probably stop, roll this film up, and then maybe pop the other roll of film. I didn't. I got greedy and I got caught. And the guy saw me, he kind of did this to me. And I rolled the film up. I never given him a roll of film that I just rolled up, so it wasn't like I ripped it out, I waited a few minutes, a few songs later, I popped the other roll of film in. I started doing the same thing, getting great shots. And I said, okay, Steve, you should stop. But Steve didn't listen. I kept going, and he busted me again. And this time I just ripped it out of the camera and threw it at his feet. I was just really upset. Then the next year, '82, when Van Halen came back to Calp House, I'm going to splurge. I'm going to take 2 rolls of film. And I had the film in the camera, and I had my buddy put the other roll of film in his shoe. And going through the pat down, they find the camera. They feel the camera. He goes, hey, what's that? And I pull it out. And now the whole line behind me, people they want to see I'm smuggling, you know. And I pull out the camera, and the guy goes, hey, you can't bring that in. You got to bring it back to your car. And I don't know how I thought this, but I said, I don't have a car. I got dropped off. Just take my film. He goes, you only have the 1 roll of film? I said, yeah, that's all I got. So he actually took the brand new roll of film out of my camera, let me bring the camera into the show. Once I got in, my buddy gave me the roll of film in his shoe, and I got those great shots from 1982 at the Calp.
I love it. I love it. So there's, I remember the days, first of all, the time period we're talking about, your book here it's called Pictures Alive, Rock Shows of the 80s and Beyond. And so walking through this book, first of all, thank you for sending it to me.
Yeah.
I loved it. I devoured it the minute it arrived at my door. I think I finished it in one night.
Me too.
And one of the things I loved about it was it took me back. It's exactly my time frame for when I started going to concerts. I went to my first concert in '83. It was Kiss Creatures of the Night, which you covered here in your book.
Yeah.
And then I was off to the races. So everything that you mentioned in this book, every concert, I remember that tour. I was in San Antonio, so some of the opening acts might have been different or whatever. But when you described the tour, and you've got great photos of the ads from the newspapers and the ticket stubs, it all came rushing back because I save a lot of that stuff myself. But for people who are listening, we're talking about, the era when new albums were Defenders of the Faith, Number of the Beast, Out of the Cellar, Blackout, Love at First Sting, Diver Down, Fair Warning, it's Shout at the Devil, Theater of Pain. This is great stuff. And so, and I remember those days because you used to smuggle things into the camera or into the arena. It would either be a camera or contraband of some sort, or you do the old ticket swap with a buddy so he could get down to the floor seat or whatever. But I want to make clear, so you're doing this on the sly. You're not doing this because you have a media pass or whatever. All these photos were taken strictly bootleg, right? On the lowdown.
Yeah, and you got to remember, guys. Back then, again, I'm a teenager in high school. I had no desire to, sell these or make money off these. It was just a hobby. You know what I mean? And I just love the fact that at one point, all 4 of my walls in my bedroom, I had like 160 8x10 frame photos of my favorite ones. Just, and when I would take these pictures, I'd be lucky to get a few good shots out of a full roll. Yeah. Okay. It wasn't like I got 36 great shots. I didn't. Hell, I could do 4 books of photos with out of focus and too dark. I could do tons of books of those. I got a lot of crap photos, but the ones that are good are in this book.
Yeah.
So
that was it. That was another thing that resonated with me. My background is in music journalism. So I interview bands, I review concerts, I review albums, that sort of thing. And once in a while, I was given a photo pass. Not because I'm a photographer at all, but the publicist would just assume that I'm reviewing the show. So I need all the credentials. I need the guest list and I need the photo pass and whatnot. So there were times when I'd get into shows with a photo pass and I'd borrow a camera from someone who was a real photographer and tell them to put it on a neutral setting. And so I've got some photos around my office here. Steven Tyler, Mick Jagger, Eddie Van Halen, the Ramones. And so I remember I had my spare rolls of film literally on the edge of the stage. Now I'm legit, right? So I don't have to smuggle the stuff in. But I know what you mean. You shoot everything that moves for the first 3 songs, and maybe you walk away with 5 great shots.
Well, I was always very envious of the guys like yourself that were leaning on the stage, not getting pushed around and getting crushed, right?
Yeah.
And most of the times I'm on my buddy Dale's shoulders or whoever I was with, so I'm above the crowd a bit. But that'd be for like a minute or two, and I'd be sitting there waiting for the lighting to be just right because everything's manual, no flash, no autofocus. This is
Right.
This is, the real deal. But we're being swayed back and forth like this because it's, this is general admission. This isn't reserved seating. And I'd see those guys, I'd see those photographers down in front, basically, like I said, leaning on the stage, and I'm thinking, oh man, what is that like? I can only imagine what that is like. You know what I mean? But it's fine. it was a lot of fun. And then bringing Scott into the picture, again, he knew of my stuff, and this book looks the way it does because of Scott Davis.
Yeah.
I might have taken the photos, but he's the one who did all the design work, had all the ideas put together, and that's why it looks the way it does.
So Scott, you and Steve were basically Kiss nerd buddies at an early age.
Yeah.
And that's much like everyone else in this room.
Yeah.